The One Piece manga has just revealed our next incredible, world-shattering clue about the true power of the Ancient Kingdom, the unbelievable secret that might have actually caused its downfall, and the true power of Joy Boy that was actually connected to it. Because with the Iron Giant finally rising from the rubble of Ekid Island and blowing all of us away by actually speaking, we have even more evidence now than ever that Joy Boy has actual deep connections to this legendary robot and how the ancient technology functions. And before we get into all the intense speculation about what the Iron Giant might do, who he is, and what its future role will be in the story, let's dive all the way back into the past here first, because while we have long thought that Joy Boy was the king or some sort of ruler in the ancient kingdom, it might surprise you that I think that he was not only king but also something much bigger. Infinitely bigger, in fact, because I'm now going to lay out all the connections that Joy Boy has had to all the giant-sized creatures that we have seen all throughout the story that makes Joy Boy basically the king of the behemoths. And let's start with the largest of them all, because since the end of Wano, we have now known for a fact that Joy Boy had strong ties to the giant elephant Zunisha. That is because right as Luffy first awakened his devil fruit, Zunisha famously proclaimed that Joy Boy had returned. And on top of that, the new shogun of Wano, Momonosuke, has also confirmed that Zunisha was once the companion of Joy Boy. And to take things even one step further, we also know that Zunisha was ordered to walk the earth for an ancient crime that she committed. And since the end of Wano, it does seem like knocking down the borders of Wano country was actually part of an order given to them long ago. Which means clearly someone was able to give Zunisha commands, and based on what I've already said, I do strongly believe that that person was Joy Boy. But that's not the only island-sized creature with obvious ties to Joy Boy though, because we also know that all the Sea Kings, which are these massive, highly intelligent sea creatures, were actually also supposed to help Joy Boy fulfill his promise to the residents of Fishman Island by lifting the giant ship Noah to the surface. In fact, these sea creatures also spoke of the two rulers meeting in the future, which could possibly represent Luffy and maybe the mermaid princess Shirahoshi, though that is not 100% sure if it's even Shirahoshi. And so that's two giant creatures slash species on Joy Boy's side already, and none of this is new, but now that we have seen the Iron Giant also rise and say Joy Boy's name, we have even more evidence of exactly why Joy Boy, and likely now Luffy as well, can seemingly command the largest and most legendary creatures in One Piece. Coincidentally, a few of them are also connected to the ancient weapons. Alright, and now back to the Iron Giant, because as this truly mind-bending tall figure rises from the rubble of Ekid Island, it says one simple phrase: "I'm sorry, Joy Boy," and we will dive into some of the truly incredible secrets we can uncover from just this single line of dialogue in just a minute. But first, this is yet another tie to Joy Boy and a giant creature, this time being this enormous, powerful looking robot. And to be fair, we already kind of knew that it was somehow connected to Joy Boy, because it does appear to wake up when Luffy turns into Gear 5th. In fact, it kind of seemed that when it heard Luffy's literal heartbeat, the drums of liberation, it gained the power to rise again. Kind of like a jump start for a car, I guess, which is just an insane power source that we will again discuss more in just a moment. But all these connections to larger than life creatures have really had me thinking about what this means for the ancient kingdom and Joy Boy's past. Because you see, one thing that we do know for sure at this point is that the ancient kingdom was this advanced civilization with access to truly incredible technology. And yeah, I know we've all been blown away by all these crazy technological advancements here on Ekid Island, but now I want to draw your attention back to the one major scientific research project that we were first introduced to at the start of the post-time skip part of the story. Because in case you forgot, during the Punk Hazard arc, this gassy scientist here who was working with Vegapunk was researching a way to turn regular humans into giants. This is a so-called gigantification process, and while at first you might not have thought that this would be relevant in the future, we do have to point out that gigantification has played part in almost every major arc since. Obviously, it was the main focus of Punk Hazard. Later, we learned that Big Mom was funding Caesar's research herself. Even the Emperor Kaido had what we think were humans turned into giants with his numbers. And on top of all that, we do know that the world government itself has also very long desired the ability to create an army of giants because, well, as we have just seen in all these recent chapters, the giants are absurdly powerful and some of the strongest fighters on the Grand Line. And to achieve this crazy goal, the world government even had Dr. Vegapunk try to create a gigantification process as well, though he supposedly failed at that. What I'm trying to get at is that clearly this is something that Oda has been thinking about and has very intentionally planted in the story for now hundreds of chapters. And I know your brain might be spinning a little bit right now and connecting some dots, so let's bring this back to Joy Boy and the Ancient Kingdom, because clearly after everything that we've learned in Egghead Island, you should know that anything that current scientists are able to do was easily possible in the past. In fact, Vegapunk himself has explained to us that the Ancient Kingdom was severely more technologically advanced than what present scientists, including him, can do, so it would not surprise me at all to learn that the Ancient Kingdom also learned the secrets of gigantification and used it for some unknown purpose. And while admittedly that part is still quite a mystery at this point, you just have to look at all the giant creatures that we've already discussed to see the possibilities. I mean, Zunisha is impossibly large, so are the Sea Kings. In fact, even the Gorosei's true monster forms are actually absurdly massive creatures. Not even mentioning all the other crazy oversized things that do exist in the Grand Line. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to learn that they were all just actually part of some sort of gigantification process sometime in the distant past. But on top of all that, we do also have to ask now if this is how the original giants were actually created in the first place as well, or maybe even a sort of hybrid race like the Buccaneers, who are somewhere in between human and giant size, who could have also been the product of this gigantification process as well. And it's also important, I think, to point out that with the powers of the Nika fruit, Luffy himself can now also bust out a larger than life version of himself as well. So I do wonder if that could have even been the original source of inspiration for gigantification to begin with. And so the point here is that if that were to be the case, it would make a lot of sense for Joy Boy to be at the head of all of these supersized creatures and could be the reason that the Ancient Kingdom was so powerful to begin with. But if all of that is true, it also begs the question, how were they eventually defeated in the first place? Well, you might actually be excited to hear that the answer may very well lie in this chapter, because with the Iron Giant now fully awake, we can definitely say that it is literally powered by Luffy's Drums of Liberation heartbeat. And since that is the case, it isn't too much of a stretch to say, I think, that Luffy's heartbeat is also very likely the legendary Eternal Mother Flame that Vegapunk and the world government were said to be trying to recreate for a very long time. Which, if I'm being honest, a heartbeat that can double as a super energy source is both incredibly creative on Oda's part, but also incredibly risky for anyone relying on it to keep their entire technology running, if you get my point. I mean, just think about it. If all your technology only works because of one single person's heartbeat, then you are very reliant on that person being around and alive to keep the power on for your entire civilization. And literally, if you want to see the downsides of this, just look at the Iron Giant itself here, because it is from the Void Century, but was clearly powered down for a very long time. In fact, besides the mysterious incident 200 years ago where it attacked Marijoa, it does seem to have not awakened at all until Luffy finally arrived on Egghead Island. So this lack of power could actually be one of the reasons that the 20 Kings were able to eventually defeat the Ancient Kingdom in the first place. They simply had to capture or kill Joy Boy, and that would have somehow removed the power source from all that incredible technology. And let's be real, if the Joy Boy from the past is only 20% as trusting and naive as Luffy is, then it wouldn't be all that hard to imagine someone successfully betraying him in order to take over his power. Though you do have to wonder, I think, if the Iron Giant has lasted all this time since the Void Century, then maybe, just maybe, some other super advanced technology still exists and could even be waiting for Luffy on Laugh Tale. Think about it. If this is the case, then it is basically game over once Luffy finally reaches the last island, because with Luffy to power up this ancient technology, then he would instantly have access to just an absurd amount of power. Now, keep in mind that this is all speculation and we don't know any of this for certain, but I mean, Roger did say he needed to wait 20 years and for Joy Boy, so if Joy Boy / Luffy was the one who could power up whatever is on Laugh Tale, that would make a lot of sense. And also, one fact that has really bothered me ever since chapter 1067 is how in the world the Iron Giant woke up 200 years ago in the first place and was able to attack Marijua. Seriously, how did this happen? I mean, if we're being led to assume, as is the case in this chapter, that the robot runs off of the drums of liberation, then that would mean that there needed to be someone who actually awakened the Nika fruit at that time. Which honestly, at least as far as we know right now, wouldn't make any sense. I mean, we don't really know of anyone important from that time period as far as I'm aware. Plus, as we know, the Gorosei believed that the Nika fruit had not been awakened in 900 years. So does that mean that there is something else that can power the ancient technology? Or does it mean that someone secretly became Nika and failed? I really don't know. Maybe something like a comet from space or some other kind of really special event that only happens once every couple of 100 years in the One Piece world. Or one other option, of course, comes from the one other person except Joy Boy that we now literally know from the Void Century, Amatsuki Toki, who later married Kozuki Oden. And we do know that Toki ate the Time fruit, which basically allowed her to jump forward in time, so maybe she leaped from the Void Century to a time about 200 years ago and did something to wake up that Iron Giant before then later leaping into Oden's time. Honestly, who knows, but the answer to this might be really important, and it is one question that we will definitely need to get answers to. And preferably, we'll be getting those answers soon because the Iron Giant here looks ready to rumble. However, it also did leave us with one more mystery that I'm still trying to actually wrap my head around here, because when it finally stands up, it does say the words, "I'm sorry, Joy Boy," which on first glance, you might assume it is apologizing for something that happened in the past, maybe a failed mission like Zunisha, or even the fact that it couldn't stay awake to protect Joy Boy. Or who knows, since it seems to be sentient, maybe even some crushing betrayal that led to the ancient kingdom's downfall. And this way of thinking honestly makes the most sense, and we might soon see the Iron Giant do something to try to make up for that mistake. However, there is one other interpretation of just this one single sentence that we still might need to consider as well. Because theoretically, it's possible that the Iron Giant could be apologizing here for something that it is about to do. And I do know this sounds kind of wild, but I wouldn't be surprised if this Iron Giant isn't actually going to be an ally like we all just seem to assume here. And so maybe instead of helping Luffy and his allies, it actually leaves straight away to resume some sort of mission that it wasn't able to complete in the past, such as retrieving that frozen straw hat in Marijua. Just a thought here, since we've been talking so much about giants. And actually, one thing that I haven't seen enough people talking about is the fact that the Iron Giant also seems fully conscious and at the very least can clearly speak. Which, to be fair, maybe isn't that surprising since we have seen so many cyborgs and other robots, especially in this arc, but I don't think we should just overlook the fact that this ancient robot seems to have have a will of its own. Because obviously we then have to ask, just how alive is this thing? Does it just have programs like an AI that allows it to speak, or does it have an actual soul and its own individual will and personality? And we're gonna have to be a bit patient to see, but honestly, this is just a majorly important difference to understand, because as we saw with Kuma earlier in this arc, it does seem like there is some evidence that souls can actually linger in bodies that are no longer alive. So is that the same case that happened here? Did somehow someone place their soul inside of the robot, or was this some sort of technology similar to how Vegapunk placed his brain in the Punk records? Or hey, an even wilder but still possible idea is that this could be the oldest case of someone giving a devil fruit to an inanimate object to make it come alive. I mean, hey, we've seen that with swords, with cannons, with a teacup, so it does seem to be possible, but I will certainly be looking forward to finding out exactly how this Iron Giant is alive, though I guess it would make sense if he was the original test subject for Dr. Vegapunk to kind of figure out how that entire process works. But now that we've spent a lot of time talking about the Iron Giant and the Joy Boy of the distant past, let's discuss a little bit the main enemies, which are of course the monstrous Gorosei, who showed their true forms in the last chapter. And just wow, I mean, I still cannot get over how incredible they all look. Like, this is some legit final villain material here, and we got to see even more of their breathtaking powers as Saint Mars did something that no one else has ever been able to do the entire arc, because with his incredible Itsumada abilities, he just smashes right through the Frontier Dome to access the inner parts of the laboratory. And man, what a casual display of mind-blowing power that might have gone over your head, because remember that the dome was basically impenetrable. In fact, the only reason Admiral Kizaru was able to get through in the first place was the fact that he is already made out of light, so the lasers in the end didn't affect him at all. On top of that though, Saint Saturn once again showed off his poisonous powers by launching deadly venom balls at Luffy and the Giants, and these things are no joke, because even though Luffy was able to bat them away somehow, we saw just how dangerous these things were when they exploded back in the faces of the Gorosei. Oh yeah, also as expected, Saint Jupiter seems to be just fine after getting his head literally cut off in the last chapter, so yeah, there truly seems to be no way that Luffy or the Giants are going to take down any of the Gorosei right here. And honestly, even they seem to recognize this, as Luffy, Dory, and Broggy are pretty much just trying to get off the island at this point. But what is really interesting here is that even the Giants are confused by the Gorosei's seemingly infinite ability to heal, so it does seem like this is not a power that has been shown for the world for hundreds of years. However, one of the most important things that we've learned from this chapter is that the Gorosei seem to have confirmed that they can also use Conqueror's Haki, which honestly, I'm not sure, it kind of blew my mind and didn't at the same. I mean, I never landed on a clear explanation for their strange powers, especially the one that we saw from Saint Saturn when he seems to make this poor Marine's head explode, and many people wondered if this was some sort of demonic ability or special magic power, but it does seem to turn out that it might have just been Haki all along, question mark? Which, you know, like whenever Oda does answer any questions, we just get more new interesting questions like, how did they ever get Conqueror's Haki in the first place? Because from everything we've seen in the story so far, the people with Conqueror's Haki have unbreakable wills and are said to be fitting of becoming kings, but does that really fit for the Gorosei, who so clearly bowed down to Imu, though I guess they might have been part of the original 20 kings? I'm really not sure. It is possible that they were once kings, part of the ancient kingdom, and only later submitted to Imu, or maybe just in their twisted worldview they may see themselves above every other living creature. For example, even in this chapter we saw that when the defeated Rob Lucci begged Saint Mars to spare Kaku, by the way, kind of a sweet gesture, wouldn't have expected that of Luffy, but Mars replied that he just couldn't say what would happen to mere insects or something like that, so clearly those guys think that they are far superior to anyone else, which could explain their immense conquerors Haki. And honestly, if it is indeed that overpowering, then it might even make sense why someone like Sanji, Vegapunk, and Frankie were just so overwhelmed by their presence that they couldn't even move. But swinging this back around to Saint Mars here though, I was honestly surprised that he is already inside the labo phase and is about to head to the broadcasting room with literally no one there to stop him, I think. Because I mean, we learned earlier in this chapter that there are still 6 minutes left on the countdown, so Mars should be able to easily stop the broadcast here, right? Honestly, that would be pretty disappointing if that were true, so I'm gonna guess that Oda will somehow throw some kind of twist in here. You know, maybe someone will show up to stop Mars, or there might be some kind of natural protection in the broadcasting room. Or, you know, even more fun, it could also be that the broadcasting room to begin with is just fake and the video is really streaming from somewhere else. Or an even spicier idea could be that the broadcast isn't even coming from Egghead Island to begin with. It could be coming from within the Revolutionary Army space, which means there would be nothing that Mars can do to stop it anyways. And you might now correctly be asking why I think it might be coming from within the Revolutionary Army space specifically, and the reason is this panel right here, because this could have been Shaka telling Dragon to make sure that the recording was ready because he predicted that the main Vegapunk would be dying soon. And honestly, that would certainly be a big-brained move from Vegapunk, but even with that possibility, I just can't imagine that this broadcast will go on uninterrupted, because it would just be pretty sad to learn all of these crazy secrets about the Void Century and the truth about the world from a pre-recorded broadcast instead of the crew figuring out on their own as they had to Laugh Tale, if you get my drift here. But even if the broadcast does end up revealing some very juicy secrets, I do certainly hope that it exposes the corruption running deep in the world government. Like, can you just imagine the mass revolt that the world would have to erupt into when they learn that they are being literally manipulated by a secret world ruler? There might be a ton more countries and people signing up for the Revolutionary Army if that was the case, and in the end though, it might not really matter because Emu is without any doubt going to be one of the strongest enemies the world has ever seen. And if you want to know the truth about his dark empire plus the twisted history of every other One Piece villain in the story, you can watch that video right here. As always, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the review, please like, share, subscribe. It does really help out the channel. And also, let's really hope that Oda takes his 3 weeks break to rest and spend some time with his family. He certainly deserves this as much as anyone else. See you in the next one.